Today, let's talk about a company that didn't just build cars, it practically built the American dream. And then, it lost its way, only to bet everything on a radical new future. This is the incredible story of General Motors. I mean, just think about that for a second. How does that even happen? A company that made half of all cars sold in the entire country goes broke? Well, to figure that out, we have to go all the way back to the beginning, to a vision that was the total opposite of its biggest rival. All right, let's get into Chapter 1, GM's meteoric rise. We're talking about how it went from just an idea to the absolute undisputed king of the entire automotive world. So you have to remember, at the time, Henry Ford was famously saying you could have a Model T in any color as long as it was black. But GM's founder, Billy Durant, he had a wildly different idea. He didn't want one car, he wanted a whole family of cars, a portfolio of brands for every single person, no matter how much money you had. And this idea was perfected by the legendary Alfred P. Sloan, who came up with what he called the ladder of success. And it was pure genius. The idea was you'd start out with a Chevrolet as your first car. Then you get a promotion, you move up to a Pontiac. You start a family, an Oldsmobile is waiting for you. For your golden years, a comfy Buick. And if you really, truly made it, you arrived in a Cadillac. GM didn't just sell you a car. They sold you a roadmap for your entire life, all within their brands. So how do you keep people climbing that ladder? Well, GM figured out that cars weren't just about getting from A to B. Nope. They were about style, emotion, what you aspired to be. They brought in Harley Earl, and he basically invented car design as we know it. He introduced things like annual model updates, so last year's car suddenly felt a little dated, and this year's model, it was something you just had to have. And did all this work? Yeah. Just look at this number. By the mid-50s, 50% of all cars sold in America were made by General Motors. That kind of dominance is almost unimaginable today. This quote from their CEO back then, wow, it really says it all, doesn't it? The company was so woven into the fabric of America that they felt they were one and the same. They were literally on top of the world. But as we all know, staying on top is the hardest part. And here's where the story takes a turn. See, all those decades of being number one created some serious blind spots. And the world, well, the world was about to change in a big way. Okay, here's the first huge crack in the armor, the 1973 oil crisis. Gas prices went through the roof, like overnight. All of a sudden, GM's huge, powerful V8s looked like dinosaurs. Everybody was desperate for small, fuel-efficient cars. And guess what? GM didn't really have them, but companies like Toyota and Honda did. Now, to cut costs and try to catch up, GM started doing something called badge engineering. Basically, they take a Chevrolet, slap a new grille on it, change the taillights, and call it a Pontiac, or an Oldsmobile. And what happened? That famous ladder of success started to rust and fall apart. Why would you pay more for a Buick when it was pretty much the same car as a cheaper Chevy? The very thing that made them great, their distinct brands, started to blur together. And the problems weren't just coming from the outside. Inside GM, things were getting really messy. You had those watered-down brands, sure, but also massive labor costs and pension promises. You had constant, costly strikes with the unions. And all the while, these super-efficient factories in Japan and Germany were building better cars for less money. It was a perfect storm. This was it, the final blow. The 2008 financial crisis brought the entire global economy to a screeching halt. People just stopped buying cars. And for a company as bloated and broken as GM had become, it was a death sentence. In 2009, the unthinkable happened. General Motors filed for bankruptcy. The only thing that kept the company from vanishing completely was a nearly $50 billion government bailout. But that's not the end of the story. Not even close. Because out of the ashes of that bankruptcy came a chance to hit the reset button, to build a totally new GM for a new century. The first move was brutal, but it had to be done. The new GM had to shed its past. That meant cutting brands. 4 of them. Gone. Pontiac, Saturn, Hummer, and Saab were all history. The new strategy was crystal clear. Stop trying to be everything to everyone. Instead, they decided to pour all their money and energy into their 4 strongest brands, Chevy, Buick, GMC, and Cadillac. The goal was to make each of them a true leader in their own right. And now, that focus has led to the biggest, most radical pivot in the company's entire history. Under CEO Mary Barra, GM is going all in on electric. They're betting the farm on their new Ultium battery technology, a flexible platform they hope will power everything from a small Chevy to a luxury Cadillac, even a new electric Hummer. And we're not talking about small promises here. These goals are huge. They're aiming to sell only electric vehicles by 2035, to be a completely carbon-neutral company by 2040. And on top of all that, they're pouring money into their self-driving car company, Cruise. This isn't just a course correction, it's a complete reinvention. So, here we are, right back where we started, with a big question. From the ladder of success to the brink of total collapse, and now this massive, massive gamble on an electric, autonomous future. We know General Motors can rise, fall, and be reborn. But in today's hyper-competitive world, is this latest, riskiest transformation the one that finally secures its place for another 100 years? Only time will tell.